Nog niet eens zo heel lang geleden dachten we dat de bank een meneer was. Een voorbeeld van degelijkheid en fatsoen. De kredietcrisis maakte een einde aan dat idee. Een jaar geleden gebeurde voor Nederlandse spaarders het ondenkbare.
Góðir landsmenn, verkefni stjórnvalda og næstu dögum skýrt. Að koma í veg fyrir að upplausnarástand skapist.
Het geld dat was ondergebracht bij de IJslandse bank iSafe was verdwenen. Dit was nog geen maand nadat het faillissement van de Amerikaanse zakenbank Lehman Brothers het wereldwijde financiële systeem in een vrije val bracht. Nergens waren de gevolgen zo groot als in IJsland, waar de ondergang van de banken ook het bankroet van het land inluidde. Sindsdien worstelen de IJslanders met de bijna niet te bevatten gevolgen. Tegenlicht over hoe financiële hoogmoed voor de val kwam.
Guð blessi Ísland.
Een jaar na het omvallen van de banken en het uitbreken van de crisis vraagt men zich op IJsland nog altijd af wat er in vredesnaam is gebeurd. Wij gaan op zoek naar antwoorden. De gids bij onze zoektocht over het eiland is Dr. Guni, muzikant, satiricus en een lokale beroemdheid.
The idea was somehow spread around that Icelandic people were very good investment geniuses, and they could make money out of nothing, and they could buy everything they wanted abroad, and the Vikings, you know, were some kind of super genius people that had much more talent in being bank workers and so on, much more than, you know, Switzerland and whatnot. You somehow lose sight of how the money is made, you know. You just go and fish some fish, and you sell the fish and so on. That's economics you can understand, but nobody understood how we were all of a sudden so rich, and you lose sight of how everything is working. You just, you know, too busy spending your money.
Iceland it's like 300,000 people. It's a family, and sometimes has been like a family of an alcoholic, and everybody keeps quiet, wants to keep quiet. They don't want to disturb the party. It has been like this in the last decade or so, because everything was going so well. And the people that were criticizing, they were seen as spoil sports. I see the crisis as it's all boils down to violence. It's economic violence. There is a handful of people that uses the whole to make profits. And these same people, they are greedy. They are greedy. They never get enough, and that is because of the fear that they will not continue to get what they to continue to get enough to make gains. So they become greedy. They are afraid of not getting enough. That's it.
I think they're bankrupt, those constructors who built that. These guys are two constructors. They are not doing very well. They're actually, it's funny, there's one guy working in this big block here at the moment. One carpenter doing everything. And the same with this. There are a few more people working there, but nothing has been sold, and it's been on sale for 1 year, and there's no movement at all. Well, there was very high plans for the whole thing. There was supposed to be 300 houses here, single houses, and I think there were like 20 big blocks of complex houses, and huge schools promised here, and a sports facility, and water world. They called it water world. So it was supposed to be the biggest swimming pool in Iceland. Was supposed to be here, and you know, it's just like in a dreamland. You know, they say there are only 10 kids here in the neighborhood, so they say you need more kids in the neighborhood, but then on the contrary, we tell them we bought the houses, bought the lawn for a certain amount of price, and you promised us this service and school. And then they get, shaky and tell, we cannot build school for 10 kids.
How did you buy this house?
I took a part of 50% of it was a foreign loan and 50% Icelandic loan. The interest on the foreign loans are, much less than on the Icelandic krona, and was that at the moment. So that was the basic plan.
Could you ever imagine that?
Well, they told me it could drop, but nobody told me 100%. The worst cases were like, 25%, and not 100%, that's for sure. But when I'm looking at it now, it's just a matter of surviving. I still believe it will get better, and this was supposed to be a 25-year loan, and I'm only in the first year of paying off this loan, and it's been like this, and so I'm not. It might be better than the Icelandic krona because of the this drop in the last year. I will not be able to survive if they will continue like this for one more year. I will just be. Well, I think most of the people in Iceland will be just.
You will be what?
Well, the companies will all be bankrupt because 80% of the companies in Iceland have foreign loans, and I think it's 40% of the homeowners in Iceland have foreign loans. They will all be off, and the housing market will, of course, collapse in this.
And you?
And me? Well, I don't ever know. I don't know about my savings. Maybe my stocks will keep popping up, or there's no one can tell how the financial market will be in the next year. It's based on that. We never know.
By and large, most people don't understand how the economy works. They just see themselves becoming richer and richer and richer. And the economy to them is just some magic black box that generates profits. And you don't want to mess with that. So, there is maybe a mental block. There's a resistance to changing a system that makes you so rich, of course. What happened is the Icelandic banks started to borrow money internationally and lend it to Icelandic citizens in foreign currency. You had a choice of either borrow domestically at very high rates or borrow internationally. And somebody buying a car could say, I can borrow 20,000 euros to the Icelandic krona, 20% interest, or I can make the same loan in euros, pay 4% interest. And what am I going to do? Of course I'm going to borrow in euros. But that means a lot of people start borrowing money in euros. A lot of money flows in, and that makes the exchange rate stronger. So the amount you owed is lower. At the same time, when people see this, the interest rates in Iceland are very high, and it attracts foreign speculators. So a lot of foreign speculators, they piled money into Iceland. At some point, close to half the economy was speculative capital. It's almost as if the Icelanders had thought they had discovered alchemy, the medieval art of turning base metals into gold.
Putting of the fishing quota played a great part in that. That is, as soon as they started, well, I'd like to explain to you how they made the quota. The boats had been fishing for a long time, for decades, for hundreds of years, really. And then they decided they wanted to control the fish, to preserve the fish stocks. So they gave each boat a quota according to what they had been fishing in the last few years. They gave it to the boat, that is to the owner of the boat, not to the fishermen though, nor the people working in the processing. So that was one thing. But when they went one step further, it was they started to take the quota as a security for the banks. And they started investing in shopping malls, in stock, and many things. So, and in the banks when they started privatizing the banks. That was played a part in the beginning of the crisis, I believe.
I saw that there was speculation in it when the prices suddenly went up. And I know of instances where there were men who were buying quota in a circle between them to get the price higher. It was like a circle up. The red one is the quota, you see. It starts here. Here it comes into the situation that I said no more. I saw some of my colleagues were buying after that, and I was telling them this is too high. They didn't stop, and those guys are in trouble now. This is the stock market. This is 2003 or before. This is starts last part of 2003 to go up. And the prices of the stocks go up like this. Everyone said fishing and farming is the old time. Now everyone says fishing and farming is the new time. It changes very rapidly, you see.
Everybody was all of a sudden driving a black Range Rover. Like everybody had suddenly changed into a drug dealer because abroad those cars are mostly used by drug dealers. If you see a black Range Rover, it's probably full of drug dealers. But in Iceland, it became a status symbol. So, of course, when the krona fell down, all of a sudden you had to pay each month maybe twice as much as the month before. So now having a Range Rover isn't so much status symbol anymore. It's more like a hey, you're a loser. And you're paying lots of money for this car. And you probably lost your job too in the bank. So what can you do? It's a lose-lose situation. But the tales of burning Range Rovers are just an urban myth, I think. Urban legend. Everybody was saying that they were Range Rovers in flames all over town. But that's just a myth. It hasn't happened for real.
Another thing about Iceland is the fact that the climate changes so fast here. The wind, everything is happening very fast in the climate here in Iceland. So people living on the land, on the sea, etc., they have to make decisions extremely fast or not to make a decision, delay, wait, and they wait. So there's a kind of I would say, a kind of an irrationality of the Icelandic mind that is natural, so to speak. People in Iceland, they tell stories. We are saga people. We are people of the sagas, the people who tell stories. But at the same time, there is, of course, a complex of inferiority. The fact of being isolated and being small. So the desire to show the world that you can do something extraordinary or to be different and is very strong. I think I would say among many Icelanders and the businessmen, when people are talking about them as the Vikings, I mean, with the mythology of the Vikings is of course related to this. I believe that the nature and this fact affects the sensitivity, the way of thinking of the people, which are very, in a way naive, and naive not in the negative sense, but I think, for instance, the businessmen of Iceland who went out from here, they had no understanding of the way in which the economical system of the world works, but they had a very simplistic view. And therefore they could act as they did, because they did not complicate. They did not try to argue and complicate things for them. They saw possibilities and they acted upon them immediately.
The Icelanders decided that their future lay in international banking. And they allowed the banks to grow to the size of 10 times the economy. That by itself is not a problem. Countries like Luxembourg, Switzerland, the UK, and even the Netherlands have very large banks. The difference is all these countries have centuries of experience in running and regulating the banks. In Iceland, there was no such culture. No culture of risk control, just culture of excessive risk-taking. I mean, that, of course, is not unique to Iceland. Bankers everywhere in the world, they took on way too much risk without understanding what you're doing.
It's an interesting question to think about whether, in a way, this is a kind of a laboratory for the world. That is, namely, in a way, the world has become kind of a, like people have been saying, a kind of a global village, in the sense that something happening in Argentina can have an impact in China or in Iceland or whatever. This is what has been happening, in a way, in the financial systems of the world. It's extremely interesting from an ethical or moral point of view. This market ideology is so, how do I say, it has a power, enormous power, because it is at the same time the ideology of freedom. And so they are selling freedom to everybody. The freedom to buy, the freedom to become, to develop yourself, etc., etc. And so, and this ideology was extremely powerful here in Iceland, and has been now for the last 20 years. And no, there's no way to, for instance, just to mention one idea, which has been repeated in Iceland now in all the media, in all the public discourses. Competition is essential. You have to have competition everywhere. Competition is always for the good, and so you have to private, and this is related to a set of political activity, and this simply is false, as everybody knows if you just start to think about it. Many competition is very often for the not at all for the good, and you could, and this is related, of course, to this way of looking at, as I said before, as human relationship, as it was nothing but an economical exchange.
What I have been seeing, especially with like the men like 55, 60 years old who was losing their job for the first time in their whole life. They are coming here and they are really, really ashamed of it to have to be coming, to ask for help for food or ask her to pay the medicine or something like that. They are both angry and maybe they is coming here and very angry, or after 5-10 minutes they start to cry. So people are very ashamed to have to ask for help like that. I, as a social worker, is at the same time dealing with a lot of new people, dealing with the new group of people who I never worked with, because I have never worked with 55, 60 years old men who was angry or crying, who never in their life have to have asked for help before. That is something new, and they don't teach that in school. I think it's difficult to talk about it, but it is. Now we are experiencing like a group of what you call a foreigner single men who go, I think they go through all Europe and looking for a work. And they are staying here maybe for last year because there's a lot of work, and get full employment money, and maybe just spend 1/4 of that here in Iceland, like paying the rent for the room and maybe a telephone card or something like that, but sending the money home to the families, Poland, Lithuania, whatever they are from. But and like I say to them, I have a full understanding that their family in back home need help, but that is not what we do here. We have more than enough. So for them now we say no, because we don't want to support families in Poland or Lithuania. We cannot do it.
There have been various, ideas about like saviors and about, who can save Iceland. 2 weeks ago, the popular director David Lynch was here. I don't know if you knew of that. But he gave a lecture about transcendental meditation and about how transcendental meditation could save the Icelandic people.
The transcendental meditation, movement knows Iceland is in, tough shape right now. So you work with way more happiness, ideas flow more freely, relationships improve, the world looks brighter and better, you have more energy, fatigue lifts away. It's so beautiful for the human being.
Doing this meditation very intensely, then Iceland's fortunes would turn to the better, also economically speaking. So there is a lot of interest in getting ideas from abroad, but as you can maybe infer from this story, some of these measures are quite, desperate. Icelanders are basically willing to listen to any crackpot theory. So I really hope that that will make them also, more willing to listen to, radical ideas. And I think Negri is one who really gives you that, because he is, of course, this figure of constantly fighting revolutionary who has never given up, despite having gone through some pretty, tough experiences with being arrested and prosecuted and outlawed and all of that. An inspiration, I think you could say.
Est-ce que tu as attendu longtemps ou...
Non, j'ai attendu 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes,
mais je ne savais pas où aller parce qu'en plus ça ne fonctionne pas.
Ah, ça ne fonctionne pas, ok. Mais bienvenue en Islande. C'est un grand plaisir, grand plaisir.
Já, ég held reyndar að það sé ekki æskilega að fjölga hérna, sko, þetta rosalega flókið.
It's obvious that I guess neoliberals, they were overjoyed in a way to get their hands on Iceland because they could implement their theories really rapidly here, and so.
Et ceux qui arrivaient ici, qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est un point spécifique dans cette circulation de la valeur et dans cette folie, non, qui a pris le néolibéralisme, qui a pensé d'avoir dans sa main la mesure et la possibilité de l'utiliser n'importe comment. C'était vraiment la crise de n'importe comment. Voilà. Et ici, c'était un centre du circuit, de la circulation mondiale, non? Et pourquoi? Parce que c'est un petit pays dans lequel on peut cacher les choses, on peut, non? On peut faire entrer les choses et les faire repasser de l'autre côté. Tout ce qui est l'illégalité profonde qu'il y avait dedans. L'illégalité, mais pas seulement l'illégalité, une espèce de folie, non, qu'il y avait dedans, à ces mécanismes. Avec tous ces mathématiciens, avec un savoir construit. Il y a une dizaine de prix Nobel qui construisaient cette folie. Donc, et tout ça s'est concentré sur ce pays. C'est concentré là et là, bouf, explosé. Alors, vous êtes témoin de cette explosion. Mais le problème est que cette explosion détermine, c'est pas seulement celui de la protestation et tout ça qui est fondamental, mais c'est l'autre. Commencez à imaginer comment cette situation peut être prise en main dans une manière démocratique fondamentale.
And one thing that I think is actually harmful is that there is this dominant, almost, ethos that any kind of structure is, in fact, undemocratic. As soon as you have a meeting, it's like you're a fascist. If you decide that you want to have it seriously. And this is I feel this a lot among people of my generation. There is almost like a phobia against this notion that okay, we're going to decide to meet at 8 o'clock and to have a discussion for 2 hours. It's.
But people.
Don't you agree with this?
Yeah, yes, and also there is a small group of people, left-wing people, that have been trying to make an organization, and they have new people showing up every week. Lots of interested people, but they never show up again because the meetings are so boring. So it's kind of.
Je ne vois pas des. Surtout dans une situation mondialisée, dans laquelle on a la possibilité d'accélérer les procès à travers des exemples. Il faut construire des exemples. Je ne sais pas si ici il y a 300 000 personnes. C'était un exemple, c'était une métaphore du développement et de la crise du capital financier, mais ça pourrait être aussi l'exemple, la métaphore d'un essai. C'est pas résolutif, non? Mais ça suffit que ça dure une semaine. Ce soir, dans les banques, non?
Sit down in the banks.
Écoute, c'est comme à Paris en mai 68. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? C'est pas passé grand-chose, hein? Mais c'est passé que les gens se sont assis dans les lieux de pouvoir. Solo la moltitudine, la storia della lotta di classe e ribelle possono fare. Ma il rapporto fra condizioni storiche e produzione di soggettività si modifica continuamente. Come prima avevamo detto, e questo è uno dei termini sui quali e ad essa corrisponde la produzione di soggettività ogni volta adeguata e diversa. Una composizione politica che deve ritrovare nelle sue condizioni storiche forme concrete di espressione e desiderio di ora, la produzione di soggettività, la nuova composizione politica possono anche anticipare le condizioni storiche e sociali dentro le quali il processo rivoluzionario si costruisce.
Second point I want to make is that we have now a crisis of a male culture, and I'm amazed that you don't mention it in your book.
The what culture?
Of a male culture. Women own 1 to 2% of the wealth of the world. Women own 1% of land of the world. Women earn 11% of the wages of the world, and you do not mention this, and it bothers me tremendously.
Yes, here.
Who's that?
It's Ólafur Ólafsson.
Yeah.
One of the guilty ones. Several people suspected of criminal activities, including this one, the guilty rich guy. He is going down.
Perhaps the first sign that something was amiss is probably in November 2005. Just remember, almost 2 years before the global crisis. And Iceland experienced a mini crisis in February 2006, which really should have served as a warning sign to the banks and to the government that something was seriously wrong. First, it was the international rating agencies that were warning the governments, and I suspect, without knowing it, that the government got private warnings from international bodies. The banks started to find it increasingly difficult to borrow money from international banks because the big banks, the Deutsche Bank, the Citibank, the guys that used to provide the money, they realized what was going on, and they started to charge increasingly high interest rates to provide the banks with their activities. But at the time, the global economy was doing well. If you invested money, you made profits. So the banks just said, if you're not getting the money from the regular places, we're going to try to find money elsewhere.
It's a win for Landesbank. They want to expand, they want to take over other companies, so it's good for us both. This is a very exciting new partnership, and so I see no problems at all.
Afmæli á þessari öld.
So Landsbanki decided to open up a branch in London under the name of iSafe. That branch was regulated and insured by the Icelandic government. iSafe was basically only operated on the internet and offered high-interest savings accounts, perhaps 2 or 3% more interest than the banks were getting from than other banks were offering to customers. In the beginning, this was profitable, but then Landsbanki started to run into real problems borrowing from other banks. The interest they were paying on loans to other banks often exceeded 10% or more. The other banks were demanding repayment of loans, and to repay the loans to other banks, they resorted to iSafe, and they raised the interest rates on these accounts to get more and more money flowing in. And towards the end, they were just borrowing money from British savers to pay back other banks' loans which the other banks would no longer renew.
It was supposed to be music and conference hall, and it was supposed to have a special design all around it that made it shine like a diamond in the night. The old rich man who thought this up, he's not so rich anymore, and so the government and the city of Reykjavik have taken over the building process.
Who is the old rich man?
He is called Björgólfur Guðmundsson, and he was the owner of the National Bank with his son, and they got rich making beer in Russia. And they owned the National Bank, and they had lots of money, and got on the richest man in the world list of the magazine Forbes, which was a very happy day for Iceland when he got on the list. I think he was number 200 and something. Everybody in Iceland was very proud that day when he came in the magazine. We have one of the richest men in the world.
I suspect, without proper confirmation, that the UK authorities were increasingly concerned. They were looking at iSafe. They realized that iSafe was highly risky. They were exposing UK deposit holders to a lot of risk. And I suspect the UK authorities increasingly put pressure on Landsbanki not to raise more money within the UK. And now that meant they had increasing demands on money because they were suffering real difficulties abroad. Other banks were demanding repayment, and they were frantically looking for a jurisdiction with a lot of wealthy deposit holders where they might not know what they were up to. And they happened to choose the Netherlands.
He was quite beloved by his fellow Icelanders because he was very visible. You could see him walking around downtown saying hello to everybody, and he had special kinds of clothes. He was always he sort of dressed a little bit like a pimp from Berlin in 1936 or something, like a pinstriped suit and with a maybe pink bow tie. And he was kind of like in the Donald Duck cartoons, this rich duck, Joachim Duck maybe. He was kind of like him, walking around downtown saying hello.
In the first part of 2008, anybody spending 10 minutes on Google would have found out that Landsbanki, the parent bank of ISAF, was unstable. So anybody doing the minimum amount of due diligence would have realized that this was not exactly something good to invest in. The central bank or the Dutch National Bank would have had access to all this information, would have had access to private information. And they should have realized that the reason why ISAF was opening up in the Netherlands is because they could no longer expand in the UK. And they were doing opening up in the Netherlands because of the real difficulties they were facing attracting money.
The Dutch central banker Wellink never warned any Dutch citizen.
Either the Dutch central bank did not know what they were doing, or they chose not to warn the people.
Nobody seems to know what happens to Björgólfur Guðmundsson, and he doesn't know himself, I think. The son has been recently spotted in some party in Cannes, where he was partying with some rich people. So we still have some hope that he is rich.
When you see a dead body with a knife in the back, you are allowed to say this is probably a murder. I think that the Icelandic people were not even allowed to formulate for themselves that there had been criminal activities, criminal interference, and that this had to be investigated. So I think that was why they liked to see me there. Everybody knows what happened, that one day it was not possible for the banks to get a refinancing. That started with Landsbanki. And not getting the refinancing, they were nationalized. And when Landsbanki was nationalized, the other banks were in very severe trouble. And the British used the anti-terrorist laws to freeze all the Icelandic assets in the country. So that was a very dramatic decision.
On the 6th of October, all of a sudden it was year zero. It was a broadcast on national television. I think it was a Monday at 4 o'clock. And he said, you know, we are going down in a whirlwind of we're going down. If we don't do something now, we will just, you know, go down and to the bottom of hell or something. God bless Iceland.
Góðir landsmenn, verkefni stjórnvalda og næstu dögum skýrt. Að koma í veg fyrir að upplausnar ástand skapist ef íslensku bankarnir verða óstarfhæfir að einhverju leyti. Til þess hafa stjórnvöld margvísleg úrræði og þeim verður beitt. Á hinum pólitíska vettvangi jafnt sem annar staðar mikilvægt að slíðra sverðin við þessar aðstæður. Miklu skiptir að við sýnum bæði stillingu og yfirvegun þá erfiðu daga sem nú fara í hönd, látum ekki hugfallast og styðjum hvert annað með ráðum og dáð. Á þann hátt, með íslenska bjartsýni, æðruleysi og samstöðu að vopni, munum við standa storminn af okkur. Guð blessi Ísland.
People, 'People, 'uh, 'discovered that they could not trust the authorities. And they could not trust the authorities because they had no understanding of the economical system of the world at work. With blessi Ísland. People discovered that they could not trust the authorities because they had no understanding of the economical system of the world at work. the public authorities, and even that the public authorities had been lying. And this has been in a way confirmed. So I would say that that in a sense the crisis, which of course is a financial crisis, which first of all starts to have an immediate impact on the economical affairs of the country, in a way had a very important and deep political meaning. And this meaning is this discovery that the state was not really functioning the way it should have been. And it is of course it's related to the fact that the state authorities been really instrumental in building up this financial system, this building up of the privatization of the bank, privatization of many other companies, as well as the weakening, systematic weakening of the public institutions.
We should absolutely look at the Icelandic situation as one very exemplary one. And this is also why I don't like the reaction of the international community. Their case has not been looked into very objectively, trying to find solutions, how to go on, how can we avoid the Icelandic economy to slow down totally, and what are the responsibilities really. I think that due to the European directives, the place of London had the responsibility to ensure that the control of the banks that operated within their territory should be as good as in England. And when you know that Icelandic Central Bank in 2007 wrote that the Icelandic government was not putting guarantees for their banks, that they were private banks, they were not heard. And I think that the rating agencies did not do their jobs. They relied on the fact that they were too big the banks were too big to fail, and that the Icelandic government would be there to pay.
Er is veel onzekerheid gerezen onder Nederlandse spaarders met tegoeden bij de IJslandse bank iSafe. En ik wil al deze spaarders bij iSafe duidelijk maken dat hun gelden tot een bedrag van €100.000 verzekerd zijn.
We are taking legal action against the Icelandic authorities to recover the money lost to people who deposited in UK branches of its banks. The Chancellor is saying today that he will stand behind the deposits of these customers. We are showing by our actions that we stand by people who save in Britain.
Today, to see that the Icelandic people has inherited the debt of these banks, I think that people are not thinking over it by obliging them. And this is really obliging them, because Barroso says you will never become a member of the European Parliament unless you sign the Gordon Brown's request for the iSafe indemnisation. And they are playing along with the monetary fund. That was what Gordon Brown said himself. We are looking into this with the monetary fund. And the monetary fund said, we will not give you the help you need unless you sign. And when you know that there was a limitation within the European regulations for €20,000 per deposit, and that Gordon Brown chose to pay 100%, and that this charge is now on 320,000 people, having each €100,000. And when you know that they are a member of the European Economic Unit, and they are allowed to move around, they are not serf. They all speak Scandinavian language, they are skilled people, they will leave the country. So I think that The debt will not be reimbursed, but we could have terrible consequences for all of us. And I think this has not been taken into account. There has been a very short time political position of a politician that wants to be re-elected and who wants to show his muscles and say, I'm a very powerful politician. And then, well, I think the interest of Iceland and maybe the European interests were sacrificed here. It was a very short time.
What has to be done is to build up a new kind of trust between people in the society, and the role of the political domain is to do that. If we don't have that trust that this is being worked on, that we are moving forward in building this up, then the crisis will spread, and then we are in danger of dictatorial way of thinking. There are people. I mean, some kind of revolution will start in Europe, and this has even started in a way. What we really have to see is to try to avoid that one strong political ideology starts suddenly to come in and fill out the empty space.
We've been shooting a commercial on the ship and around the ship for the container company, Eimskip. It is for one of the biggest companies in Iceland, but it's been a really small commercial, very small crew, and there are no helicopter shots. It's not about the captain or the big shots or the glamour of things. It's about the working man, and that we hope he survives. It goes sort of back to these old Icelandic sailors and this hoping for a safe arrival back from the seas. The choice of music is very national, sort of patriotic, which surprised me a little bit.
Velkomin heim, segir velkomin heim, þau verma hin fögru orð.
Velkomin heim, yfir hafið og
And then you just, when the live broadcast stop, you sort of just start to live again, and when you stop to think about money, all your troubles will go away.